She said two words, and only two words, in the courtroom today. It was her first appearance as a prosecutor in an arraignment in her career as a prosecutor, and career is a very strong word to use for someone who has so far spent exactly 12 work days of her life in that career. If you're a kindergarten student in America tonight, first of all, you should be asleep at this hour. And second of all, you already have a longer career as a kindergarten student than Donald Trump's new favorite prosecutor has as a prosecutor. She proved once again today that she knows absolutely nothing about prosecuting anything. The only two words she spoke today were her name, and she got that wrong, as only she could. In a lifetime of listening to lawyers identify themselves in court, as they are required to do at the beginning of a proceeding, I have never heard a lawyer get that part wrong until today. She was surrounded by lawyers who knew how to do it and got it right, including one who showed her how to do it right before she got it wrong. The clerk was the first to speak in the courtroom today, asking the lawyers to, quote, please note their appearances for the record. And the proper response to that is the lawyer's name and who the lawyer is representing. Everyone knows that, except Donald Trump's favorite new prosecutor. The clerk said, will the parties please note their appearances for the record? Mr. Lemons, good morning, Your Honor. Tyler Lemons for the United States government. Ms. Halligan. Lindsey Halligan. Mr. Diaz, good morning, Your Honor. Gabriel Diaz for the United States. The court, good morning. Mr. Fitzgerald, good morning, Your Honor. Pat Fitzgerald, and it's the honor of my life to represent Mr. Comey in this matter. The court, good morning. Ms. Carmichael, good morning, Your Honor. Jessica Carmichael for Mr. Comey. Now, I know if you haven't spent much time in courtrooms, it sounds very picky of me to note that 36-year-old Lindsey Halligan, who has never prosecuted anything in her thin experience as a lawyer, didn't say Lindsey Halligan for the United States. That's what every federal prosecutor says every time, something like that. And there's a very powerful ring to it in that room. It's a phrasing that scares defendants, although nothing could scare the tallest man in the room today, the 6'8" defendant, former FBI Director James Comey. But for a typical defendant who shows up in court for the first time in a federal case and hears the case announced as the United States of America versus John Doe, many a John Doe gets weak in the knees, realizing that he's up against, legally anyway, the United States of America. Federal prosecutors love to throw that around. Tyler Lemons for the United States government. Gabriel Diaz for the United States. Lindsey Halligan didn't know she was supposed to say that. Lindsey Halligan didn't know that she technically failed to respond to the directive to explain her appearance in court, what she was doing there. But what she said was more accurate than trying to claim that she was there for the United States. She was there for Donald Trump and only for Donald Trump. She personifies Donald Trump in that courtroom. But Donald Trump actually has more experience in criminal courtrooms than Lindsey Halligan has. Donald Trump really is the prosecutor of this case, and he is the most incompetent prosecutor in history. And so he has chosen the most incompetent so-called acting U.S. attorney in history. The silent Lindsey Halligan's prosecutorial career is now 12 days old at this point, but might not last much more than that, maybe not more than another month or so, because knocking her out of the case is one of the first things that James Comey's lawyer intends to do, as he announced to the judge today in discussing the scheduling of the case in which James Comey has asked for a speedy trial. Defense attorney Patrick Fitzgerald told the judge, We would like to bring a motion to challenge the lawfulness of the appointment of Ms. Halligan as United States Attorney because we think that's an unlawful appointment. Patrick Fitzgerald didn't elaborate on the point at this stage. He was simply alerting the judge to the kinds of motions he intends to file before the trial, while suggesting an expedited hearing schedule for those motions so that there still could be a speedy trial. Judge Michael Nachmanoff, who was appointed by President Joe Biden, might turn out to be the fastest working federal judge we have seen in the era of Trump-inspired federal prosecutions. He was ready to set a trial date before Christmas, but adjusted to January 5th in order to accommodate the pretrial hearing schedule proposed by James Comey's lawyer. No schedule was proposed by the silent Lindsey Halligan or the two assistant U.S. attorneys who had to be imported from North Carolina to Virginia because no one in the federal prosecutor's office in the Eastern District of Virginia was willing to join Lindsey Halligan in this case, trying to prosecute James Comey. She was, like anyone who doesn't understand what's going on in a courtroom, apparently lost throughout the proceeding. The New York Times reports Ms. Halligan, a former insurance lawyer, did not speak in court. Instead, she spent the hearing rocking and nodding in her chair as a junior federal prosecutor brought in from North Carolina spoke for the Justice Department. And that junior federal prosecutor said, "We don't know what we're doing." He didn't speak those words, of course, but he said something that you can spend a lifetime in federal courts and never hear. When James Comey's lawyer said, quote, "We haven't received a single piece of paper of discovery to date," the junior federal prosecutor, Tyler Lemon, said, "We're just getting our hands around the discovery as well." What? How can you be standing there prosecuting James Comey and not know what your evidence is to prosecute James Comey? That's what the junior federal prosecutor told the judge today. We don't know what our prosecution evidence is. That's what he meant. The judge knew that. The judge's response to that was a judicial version of, "Are you kidding me?" The judge said, "All right, well, I will tell you, I'm a little skeptical of that. This does not appear to me to be an overly complicated case. There are 2 counts. It's a discrete set of facts." That's a polite way of saying this is the thinnest indictment that could possibly exist. And here it is, right here.
Alexandria, Virginia. In a courtroom drama that laid bare the fragility of President Donald Trump's Retribution campaign, former FBI Director James Comey's arraignment on October 9th devolved into a humiliating spectacle for the prosecution, as Trump's hand-picked U.S. Attorney Lindsey Halligan, whose prosecutorial career spans just 12 workdays, fumbled basic protocol and faced revelations of internal DOJ rebellion. The 1.5-page indictment, alleging false statements and Senate obstruction from Comey's 2017 testimony, drew a speedy hearing before U.S. District Judge Michael Nachmanoff, appointed by President Joe Biden, who set a January 5th trial date while signaling impatience with the government's incompetence. Halligan, 36 and a former insurance lawyer with 0 federal trials, uttered only 2 words, "Lindsey Halligan," botching the standard appearance. Lindsey Halligan for the United States. Flanked by imported assistants from North Carolina, after no Virginia career prosecutors would touch the case, she rocked silently in her chair as junior prosecutor Tyler Lemons confessed, "We're just getting our hands around the discovery." Defense attorney Patrick Fitzgerald, ex-U.S. attorney who convicted Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich and al-Qaeda terrorists, pounced. "We haven't received a single piece of paper. We don't know person 3 or person 1. The judge's retort was withering. "This does not appear to be an overly complicated case. I will not slow this down because the government does not promptly turn everything over." The proceeding exposed Trump's prosecutorial farce. Halligan's predecessor resigned for refusing charges against Comey and New York AG Letitia James. Another top Virginia prosecutor, Elizabeth Hughes, is defying pressure on James's mortgage fraud claims, citing no probable cause and bracing for firing. Fitzgerald announced plans to challenge Halligan's unlawful appointment and file vindictive/selective prosecution motions, arguing retaliation against Trump's constant critic. Nachmanoff referred the disqualification to another judge but accepted Fitzgerald's expedited schedule, rejecting delays for classified evidence. Either it's not relevant, or it can be declassified, or we'll go through the fastest SEPA process you've ever seen. Comey, towering at 6 feet 8 inches, entered unbowed, pleading not guilty amid a case thinner than most. One televised sentence from a Senate hearing with Ted Cruz, duplicated for 2 counts. Fitzgerald hailed it the honor of my life to represent him. MSNBC exclusives revealed Halligan's isolation, no local signatories, forcing external recruits, a damning assessment, per ex-prosecutor Ankush Kardori. Media Matters' Angelo Carusone noted right-wing disillusionment, echoing John Durham's flop, with fringe outlets hyping it while Fox demurs, frustration amplified by Epstein inaction. A 282 former DOJ official's letter decried Trump's Nixon-level assault on independence, broader than Watergate. Trump's deleted Truth Social post, Comey guilty as hell, prejudices the jury, risking mistrial like Nixon's Manson slip. Prosecutors must prove corrupt intent beyond doubt, a rare bar, 1 conviction per decade, against a 2019 IG report clearing Comey, faulting McCabe. The hearing, 27 minutes of prosecutorial stumbles, humiliated Halligan and her novices, who admitted ignorance of evidence. Fitzgerald, the room's most seasoned, vowed to expose the retaliatory origins. As grand jurors rejected a 3rd count, only 14 of 23 approved the rest. The case teeters. Trump's fever dream of Comey's humiliation boomeranged, shrinking his favorite prosecutor to silence. With midterms weeks away and Epstein petitions at 218 signatures, the fast tests judicial resolve, Fitzgerald's motions could end at pre-trial. Comey's confidence. Let's have a trial. For Trump, it's a clown show unraveling, as resistance, from prosecutors to governors, grows.